Hi, and welcome to Write Your Book Your Way, the interview series that goes behind the scenes of real self-published books to explode the myth that there's a right way to write your book. I'm here to give you the freedom to write in a way that feels good to you and gets it finished. I'm Kris Emery, editor and owner at Kris Emery Editorial, and I'll be interviewing my past clients, all first-time non-fiction writers and entrepreneurs, to show you how it can be done. That means how it could be done, not how it should be done. Today I'm talking with Barbara Nixon, who I worked with as editor on her book, The Boss Hat. Barbara Nixon is a personal leadership coach who helps business owners, directors and managers get back in control of their day, work smarter, improve their confidence and really grow as a leader. She does this through her one-to-one coaching programs and her online programs, and prides herself on teaching leaders at all levels the small tweaks they need to make to reap massive results to build a life and career that they really love. Barbara has over 20 years in the personal development arena, including 12 years in corporate positions. She's the host of the interview series Lessons from Leaders and is the proud author of The Boss Hat, a self-development book designed to help you be the leader you were always meant to be. Here's my conversation with Barbara. Get straight into it then. You wrote a book called The Boss Hat, and what I really would like to know first off is, aside from being an author, how does the book relate to what you do in your business?
I've been in the people development space for all of my career, and so the Boss Hat has kind of been percolating in my head for a long time. But in terms of how it relates, because I'm an executive leadership coach, I do a lot of online leadership programs, so it's kind of the first step for my clients. If they didn't want to dive into any a big program, or if they didn't want to actually have one-to-one coaching, they can do something on their own in their own time with at their own pace.
Yeah, so did you have anything in that kind of space before you had the book? Obviously there's a little bit of free content that starts to introduce people to us, but did you have anything that was what was the first step before you had this as the first step?
Oh, right. So the first step, I'm thinking back, I had a free ebook.
Okay.
And it was a free downloadable ebook. It wasn't on Kindle or anywhere, it was just on my website. And it wasn't very long, but it was kind of, if I think back, it was the first iteration of what the Boss Hat was or became.
Yeah.
And I saw how popular it was, and I saw how much people wanted those kind of tips. So it showed me that there was room for more. Aside from that, I had I had a blog post, a couple of free PDFs, but nothing really as substantial as a book.
Okay, awesome. So how did you come to the decision to start writing the book? What made you get going? And I know for you had a special birthday coming up, so there was obviously a deadline there, and presumably, I'm just kind of assuming this, presumably you worked back and realized you needed to get started. But what was the thing that got you kind of over the line and sitting in the seat and actually writing?
Well, every year on New Year's, I would sit down and write my wish list for the year. My goals, things that I'd really want to achieve, places I wanted to go and things I wanted to do. And I've been doing this forever, and writing a book has been on that list for as long as I can remember. I could show you notebooks and pieces of paper of like, write a book, do this in whatever year it was. And that year I was turning, it was a special birthday. I won't say how old it was, but it was a special birthday. And I was so that year I was thinking of bigger and better things to do. And I found myself writing on the list, write a book, and I got angry with myself that it had taken me such a long time, and I was still writing this, write a book. And to be honest, I got bored with saying write a book, and I thought, what is stopping me? Am I never going to do this? Is it something that I need to park? or do I just need to get my finger out? What's really stopping me from doing it? And it was that moment, it was kind of a culmination of me getting fed up with it and, you know, turning a special number and thinking, actually, this is the year, because I'm sick of writing it.
Okay, so on that, what was stopping you? Did you get to the bottom of that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. What was stopping me? It was probably just procrastinating. It was, you know, just life happening, and like I said at the beginning, I've been kind of playing and percolating this idea for a book for a long time, because it was so integrated in my business and my career that I just don't think I was ready. I don't think I'd kind of formulated the plan and the structure. And it wasn't until, you know, like I said, I got angry with it and I forced myself to sit down and write it down, that everything kind of came together.
Right. So in your mind, was write a book very much linked to writing this book? Or do you remember a time where you had write a book on the list before you knew what the book was, this book was?
Now that I'm talking to you, it's interesting this, isn't it? I have actually written a children's fiction book. And I wrote that years ago. And it's something that it sits on my laptop, and I've read it to each of my children. And I actually have a paper copy that I read to my children, and they all go, "Oh, it's fantastic! I love it," you know. And it's kind of based for the like early teens. And I've never done anything with it. It just became my first writing project, really. And I'd kind of forgotten about it until you've just mentioned it. So it wasn't write this book. It was write any book. Write a book.
And get it published, presumably.
And get it published.
You had actually finished that one.
Yes. And it's funny that you should say that, because my goals about a few years before The Boss Hat came to fruition, that what I was writing down on my goal list was not write a book, was write and publish a book. So I had that transition, and I've actually gone back to look, and it went from write a book to write and publish a book.
Interesting. Okay, so we're all like unraveling all of the some of the thoughts that, you know, people probably get hung up on before they even put pen to paper, and how long it might be kind of in your consciousness before it actually gets started. And I do sometimes hear from people, in fact quite a lot, I just got sick of myself saying it. So you sat down, you got started. Had it been something that I know you said a long time, like years of always writing this on your goal list, but is it something that you can remember always wanting to do, or just as long as you can remember?
Yeah, no, always. Even when I was little, you know, I was the kid that would write short stories. I was always writing. Yeah, it was always on my goal list.
Cool. So what was your writing process once you got started? Now, I know process sounds like quite a formalized idea for writing, and maybe it wasn't really that formal, but what did your day-to-day or week-to-week look like when you were sitting there tackling the book? I think this is something that a lot of people feel like they're just making up as they go along when they haven't written a substantial, long project. I've been asked before, you know, it just feels like exactly the same as when I write a blog post, only I'm not done by the end of the writing session. So what did it feel like day to day, or week to week, or month to month, as you were actually getting into the production of it?
Well, the first thing that I did was create the structure of the book. So I kind of wrote the chapter headings, even though these didn't end up becoming the chapter headings, but it gave me some structure to follow. Mm-hmm. And then I decided, I had the intention that I would write, or aim to write, 50 words a day, because 50 words a day is like, you know, anybody can write 50 words a day. Right. So I thought, even on my busiest days where you just don't stop, even if you're waiting for the kettle to boil, you can write 50 words. Yeah. So that was my rule, that I wasn't allowed to go to bed unless I'd run 50 words. But in reality, I knew that you never just write 50 words, and that once you get started, you write hundreds of words, you know, quite easily. But even on the days where you had writer's block, or you know, things were happening, 50 words was my minimum before I was allowed to go to bed.
And did you stick to that? Did you always? Okay.
I wasn't allowed to go to bed unless I'd done 50 words. And I told everybody this as well. So I had, you know, my family, my kids and stuff, they'd ask me as soon as somebody phoned up, have you written your 50 words? Yeah. Okay, then we can talk about something else, you know.
Love it.
That's great. So I had all of that. It was a really good intention. The second thing that made it was such a big difference was when we started working together and we booked in some time. So you book in the way that you work. I don't know whether you still work in that way, Kris, but you book a slot in your diary, and this is allocated to you as a first read.
Yeah.
When we were choosing that week, or, you know, I remember feeling triggered and a bit sick and thought, oh, crikey, I'm going to have to stick to this now. But it made the world of difference, because all of a sudden I had a fire in my belly, and I thought, right, I've got to stick to this. I can't.
Yeah, some real skin in the game with the financial commitment, the time commitment. Like, it really changes things completely to have that date locked in. But that doesn't work for everyone. Some people freak out. They procrastinate right till the last weekend. They download like their 40,000 words in the last 4 days, and what comes to me is a bit of a state sometimes, because they haven't had time to go through it. They haven't necessarily written from a very reflective place, because obviously a long piece of work allows you to have kind of reflection time, which is really, really helpful for something as, you know, deep as a book. We're not talking about a blog post at the end of the day. So it's kind of necessary to do it over a bit more time than a few days. Although, you know, fair play to people who manage to get 40,000 words down in 4 days.
I have to say that I was one of those, you know, students that always left my assignments to the last minute. So I can kind of relate to that. So I do have that tendency in me to go, oh, just, you know, hell for leather right at the last minute. But I knew that I wanted to be proud of it, and I wanted it to stand the test of time, and for me to be able to, if I was going to publish it and recommend it to people and say, actually hold it up and say, I've written this, then I needed it to be right. And that only comes from just spending a bit of time on something.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. So you worked to the deadline. Was there anything else as part of the writing process, like the sitting down and doing it, that felt, I don't know, different or unusual, or that was unexpected in any kind of way? Or was it just, you know, very familiar to sit down and write some words?
It was familiar, because it was a topic that I knew inside out. So, but I think it was probably more of a learning process in terms of learning about myself, that I was to allow myself that to evolve as the book evolved, and not to just not to be too rigid, even though I'm thinking and talking at the same time, Kris. So even though I set out my structure, I gave myself permission to rejig things, to move things around, to make it my own, and to kind of be free with that as it evolved, you know, the evolution process, the growth process. And that made it so much easier.
Yeah, I think you've absolutely hit on something that I come up against all the time. Like, people write an outline and then kind of get stuck starting, and I always talk about having a loose outline, which means, sure, make a plan, but know that you don't have to stick to it. Know that you can move things around. Give yourself permission to, like, ignore some of the things that you'd already decided, if that's flowing. Because some people don't plan enough, and there's just no structure whatsoever. But like I say, on this other side, there's this a rigidity sometimes, and the reality is definitely somewhere in the middle. So yeah, I was going to pick up on that because you mentioned it earlier, having this plan but allowing yourself to not actually stick to it, which is great.
Because the book, the end product was, it didn't really fit the plan. I've kept all my initial plans, and yeah, there's kind of loose, yeah, it's like a tenuous link, but it's not it definitely evolved. And I remember vividly having those light bulb moments as I went through and thinking, this is what the book's wanting to do. You know, this is what we're doing here. Okay,
let's take on a life of its own, right?
It feels a bit weird saying that, but this is where I'm leaning towards, rather than what I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, definitely. I'm just writing that down because I want to say something on social media about your book evolving. Yeah, so I think that's another really important piece, that sometimes we think we need to know everything that's going to go into what we're writing, and actually your book informs you a lot of the time. It's not a one-way street. It's like a conversation.
It is, and I think because my writing is such a mindfulness activity, isn't it, that you come up with things that you've not thought of before, and I think I also had to become quite brave at taking things out or removing things that didn't fit, and that was probably the
hard exercise. Like, yeah, I would struggle with that part, definitely.
And there was a big chunk that it just didn't fit, and I thought, actually, this is something else. This, we're leaving this now. I've got to just take it out.
How did you get that perspective?
How did I get that perspective?
So how did you identify that section as needing to come out?
It just didn't feel right. And as I was reading it, it didn't feel right. I also had other people read it as I went along, just friends, close friends, my husband. And that was the next big hurdle, really, having other people read your work. Even though they've read blog posts and things, and you published things online, it's different. It just feels different. And because I knew that you were going to read it, I had to get other people to read it, just so I didn't feel sick about it.
It's a good idea to have test readers. People do that at various different stages. It's a good idea to have them before editing. It's a good idea to have them afterwards, like sort of advanced readers who are really there to give you a testimonial, but like not the super in-depth feedback that you might get early on. So did somebody pick up on that section that you...
I'd made notes on it and said, question mark, what do you reckon? I'm thinking it should be out. And it was just family and friends, and they went, I think you're right, it doesn't, the flow's not right.
So had you finished it at that, had you gotten to the end of your draft at that point and you were going back, or was this as you were going?
I think this was as I was going.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think from memory that I'd actually finished it at that point.
Okay.
I did want people to keep reading it as I went along, because I just felt so nervous about it. So I just felt, it was a confidence builder.
Yeah. Okay. So we've talked about how you came to start and how you went along the way. So the inevitable question is, how did you know when you'd finished? And by that I mean when you'd gotten to a point where you felt ready to hand it over to an editor, not finished as in ready to publish, but like when were you just done with it?
Well, the deadline was looming, so it was almost, it was a kind of do or die. I have to finish, and you've got to see it. Also, I'd said all I wanted to say.
Okay.
It came to just a natural conclusion. There was nothing more that needed to go in.
Okay. Awesome. And lots of people tell me that they tweak and that they're you know, sick of the sight of it by the time they hand it over to me. That's usually the clue that they're ready for editing.
And I did do that too.
And then there's another group that like hand it in just like the second they put the last full stop on the page, and they just like, oh, done.
No, I definitely fit into the first camp. I tweaked within an inch of its life. I tweaked out, everything. I wasn't worried too much about the, you know, the spelling or, you know, the grammar or anything like that, because I knew that you'd pick that up. It was whether I could safely say that, you know, I was confident in my work.
Okay, all right. So what did you learn from writing a book and publishing a book? I know there's like two separate things going on there, and I'm not really even just talking about the literal stuff that you need to know in order to publish a book, the very factual stuff. It's more the growth that you went through while you were writing, while you were taking on such a big goal. What kind of things come up for you around that?
I learned so much about myself. I learned that if a goal mattered enough to me, then it would happen. And all I needed to do with anything was just decide. It was just that decision. And it felt liberating. It felt great to just think, actually, I'm doing this now. Why have I waited so long? Or, you know, on one hand, it was, why have I waited so long? But on the other, it was, actually, this is the right time. I'm enjoying this.
That's interesting. Yeah.
And I also really made the intention, because it was such a long time coming, that I wanted to enjoy the process. It was not going to be work for me. It was going to be something that I was going to love doing. So yeah, I made that decision again very early on. And as a result, I just really enjoyed it. I liked the fact that it was freeing. I loved the fact that it was a structured part of my day. You know, it was a process, even though it was fluid, it was a process that I was going through. And it did feel liberating, from beginning to end.
Love it. So the next one's kind of more, you know, once you've published, what kind of opportunities came your way that you may not have foreseen, or what did you take away from being an author that felt different to where you'd been before?
I did feel different. I felt like, I don't know, I was credible for some reason, as daft as it sounds, and it was purely in my own head.
It's a massive piece of work. You've written all that about a subject. I think absolutely credibility is one of the top things.
Yeah.
That kind of feels different about, you know, who you are as a professional, apart from anything else. But it's one of the things that I definitely hear quite a lot. And actually, the root of the word author, the root of the word authority is author, and they are very much linked in terms of like how the person writing something is the person who has the power. So yeah, I hear that a lot, and I can definitely see where that comes from.
Yeah, so I did feel different. I also found that it was a great conversation starter. You know, so many people said, "Oh, crikey, you've read a book," you know, and all of a sudden there's that people were impressed, just like I'm impressed when people have written a book. Even though I've done it, when other people say they're doing it, I'm so impressed, because, you know, it's an amazing thing to do. Everybody should have a go.
Yeah.
In terms of other opportunities, I used the book as a springboard for my signature program. So I created a whole program on the back of it and launched that, and have run it a few times now. You know, I run it once a year, and it's just seeing people, you know, people have been promoted as a result of that book. Ultimately it was the book that started it, but the program, having people send me posts saying, "Oh, I'm reading your book on a flight," and that just, you know, it just lights you up, doesn't it? And it's so nice. And I've seen other people saying, "Oh, I read Barbara's book and it's fantastic," and recommending it to other people.
Oh, cool.
and then also just being able to gift it to my clients and to other people that are interested. And making my mum proud, crikey, that's the biggest one. That's probably top of my list.
That's the bottom line. Oh, I love it. That's really cool. So there's the opportunities that you have had for yourself, and also like a lot of personal learning, but also the opportunities that it's created for your clients and for their learning as well, because of the actual content of the book, of course.
Yeah.
Awesome. So last question really, and this is sort of sequential on purpose, but if you were to do it again or write another book, what would you do differently this time around, that either you didn't do last time, or like didn't do it all last time, or that you didn't really love about the process last time that you would want to change?
I would change the finishing line if I did it again, when I do it again. So the finishing line for me was publishing the book, actually holding the book in my hand. And I'd not taken into consideration the marketing of the book. That I did that, and that came, and it's still an ongoing process. And it's but I think before I start, I definitely change the finishing line to when I sell X amount of copies, or when I see it in this bookshop, or whatever it might be. I definitely changed the finishing line, because for me, remember, my goal was to write and publish a book.
Write and publish. So there's a third part. Yeah.
I did that. It would definitely be see my book in an airport gift shop, or bookshop, or have it on the bestsellers list, or whatever the goal is. I definitely changed that initial goal. I think the writing process was perfect. It worked really well for me, so I wouldn't change any of that. It was, but definitely it's good to have a first go, and it's with anything, isn't it? The first time you do anything is you're learning. So I'm that much wiser for next time, and so it'd be easier to get off the starting blocks. It'd be easier just to get the book going and start writing, and I'd have people in my corner like yourself, and so I'd have all of that in place. It'd probably be a lot quicker and you're more streamlined. It'd just be tweaking the end goal. So I'd just dream bigger. Right.
Okay. That's good to know. Well, I think that's pretty much everything that I had planned to ask you about, the process end to end, really. But end to end for me, which is the production part, is obviously not end to end for the whole thing. So it's really great to get the extra experiences like before I get involved and beyond what it is that I do. So I think that's pretty much everything that I had to ask.
Brilliant.
So much for joining me today.
No problem. What I will say just before you stop recording is that you made the process so easy. So easy all the way through, and I always felt that I was in really good and safe hands. So I really appreciated working with you.
That's really good to know. Was that something that you were looking for as part of working with an editor, or had you just got it in? Some people have it in their mind, I know I need an editor, but that's to fix to fix any grammar stuff. Did you know that you needed somebody who took care of everything else, or was that a bonus in your
No, that was absolutely a bonus. Okay. Yeah, that was a bonus. I did want somebody that I would enjoy working with, so I think that was part of the selection process, but it was a bonus that it felt so easy.
Yeah, awesome. That's really good to know. Thanks so much for adding that at the end, and thanks for joining me today.